Hello, everyone. This is Nogol Madani, founder of Glee Factor. I'm host of Human Mode Conversation. Today, we're here for the 28th episode, and my guest today is Julie Watson, the CEO of Ultimate Tech, and also the country director for Women in Tech. Julie, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes. So, Julie, before we start, do you want to just share a bit about these two projects, both Ultimate Tech, what do you guys do, and also Women in Tech?
Yes, so Ultimate Tech is a company founded in 1989, and I am second generation leadership since 2017. And basically, what we do is we build software for the printing industry.
Awesome.
So for commercial mailing, labels, packaging, and we really focus on the aspects of the workflow to automate the production of
Yes.
these print products, such as the imposition, nesting, and finishing automation for those who are familiar with this industry. And
I
for those who are not, basically automating the production process is
love
where we're at. And in terms of women in tech, Canada. So we
Yes.
started Women in Tech Canada about 2.5 years ago, and it's really about supporting the cause of women in STEM, and we're aligned with the global community of women in tech, and aligned with the objective to mobilize 5 million women from now till 2030. So we're
Awesome.
actively doing this through networking, events, training, and I know you and I, Nogel, have worked together on some of these activities.
Yes, I love the work that you do, Julie, in general, like both at Ultimate Tech, but also your dedication to somehow empower the community. And, it's interesting because I also, through Glee Factor, the community that a majority of time we serve is like younger leaders, like in their early 30s, like wanting to lead differently. And we serve both men and women, but definitely I think that there is a great opportunity for female professionals in the STEM world because of their familiarity with like technology. But I want to today talk about your journey, understand better where you're coming from, what are some of ideas, some of your like insights. And my hope is that, like younger leaders are going through unprecedented times. Like it's quite challenging. They have to perform, they have to transform, they have to constantly reinvent themselves. They need to lead change. They don't have the right tools, they don't have the right role models. So for me, it's important that they get to see different type of leadership that I believe it's more future ready and it's more human centered. And at the same time, through hearing your insights, they can just somehow hopefully build their own identity and their capacity. So I always start with a question from the guests that, like, what does leadership mean to you? You are wearing different hats as a CEO of a company, as like a community builder and a community director. Like, what does it mean to you, and how has it evolved for you in the last, let's say, 10 years or 20 years of working?
That's an excellent question. Leadership to me is not so much one big statement or one major role. To me, it really translates itself in day-to-day actions.
Mhm.
And I think, yes, it's changed for me personally. It's changed throughout my career because obviously I've also evolved, as a person and as a leader. But I'd say that, leadership is about being able to identify the path forward, the vision, the path forward, and surrounding yourselves with the right team,
Mhm.
and communicating this path and working towards it. But it's in little habits every day.
Yes.
There's a lot of things about leadership that I find you don't learn at school. And there are, many situations where you have to think fast on your feet and adapt and learn and communicate and mobilize your team. This really happens on a day-to-day basis.
Basic.
So I'd say leadership is not so much like this big new role or this big statement. I'd really say it's what are these actions that you take on a day-to-day basis that will bring you to your goal.
Yeah, and I love this because I definitely like believe in, like we're really aligned in terms of like like it's a constant, like how you show up on a daily basis, and it's your consistent actions basically that define your leadership, your identity as a leader, and your capacity. But you mentioned something actually very interesting, Julie. You said that identifying the path forward, we are going through a time that no one knows what's happening next, and this could be quite challenging. Like, what would you like tell our like community, like what are some of the things that just somehow help you say, okay, like how can I identify the path forward, and is this like written on stone, or there's a bit of flexibility because of the amount of change happening in the world?
There's a lot of change happening now. There has always been a lot of change in a certain extent. I mean, change is the only constant, right? Is the expression. But I have to say now the shift seems to be a little bit more creating a little bit more unknown,
Yes.
and I think that it's easy to get lost in translation a little bit with everything that's going on if you focus too much on it, right? I think
Got it.
sometimes the basis of defining a good strategy is also coming back to the basics. It's understanding, in the case of a company, such as our company, it's understanding who are your customers, what are their needs, where is your industry going, how is your customer going to buy from, 5, 10 years from now, and then mapping this out
Yes.
as a general perspective, a general thought, a general intent.
Yes.
However, how you get there, basically what I say is to be adaptable and
Yes.
curious and to learn, because no matter what plan you put in place, it's never actually comes out the same way. You have to constantly adapt and
Right.
evolve and change and whatnot, but the intent, has to be there. So
Awesome. Love
that's what
that.
I would recommend.
Love that. That there's a destination, but you have to be very flexible in the path forward, you know? And I love
Yes.
what you mentioned, Julie, about like really reflecting on certain things. One thing that I'm hearing all the time is from people is that we don't have time to reflect. We don't have time to pause. But I can see that you're putting this emphasis that you need to give yourself that space so that you can identifying the path forward, the strategies to get there, and then like you cannot be in the execution mode nonstop. We can't.
Exactly. Well, it's a balance because obviously we all have to do some form of execution, but
Yeah, for sure.
it's working in the business and on the business. I think it's
Exactly.
important to take some moments of reflecting where we're going, yet it's not realistic to say, okay, I'm going to take the whole week just
Yeah,
to
for
do
sure
some
not.
some
Yes.
some thinking. But it's important to find those moments
Yes.
so that you can come back to, okay, what's my plan? Am I
Mhm.
going in the right direction? And that's really important as a leader. And
For sure.
it's not necessarily going to come from your organizational structure. I think that's something that needs to come from yourself. It's a certain discipline that, you need to have to be able to block this time and
Yes.
assess, this was my path. Is it still the right path? And am I doing the right things to get there? And
Yes.
sometimes you realize, oh, I need to adjust something. And sometimes you're like, oh, I'm ahead of my original plan.
This is exactly. And I love this. You said that on the business and in the business. Like it was a good reminder for someone sitting here.
It's a good reminder for anybody in business because
Yes.
sometimes we're so stuck in the execution. And it's hard to find those times to
To
take a step
switch.
back. But I
Exactly.
But I think it's so important to put ourselves a reminder or, to have that time to
Yes.
think about where
Really
we're
yeah,
going.
intentionally build that time in your calendar, because otherwise it will never gonna happen. So, you told me about like the idea that leadership for you is a day-to-day actions. What was that moment that you thought that, okay, I think that I'm a leader now? Like you had a title, like what was it? Do you remember any specific moment?
I mean, I think it was pretty clear when I was a kid that I had one of these, leadership driven personalities, I guess you're going to call it, starting with organizing my sister's birthday parties.
Okay. So you were in the planning mode from the get-go.
From the get-go, I was always, as somebody that was action driven and really looking at, planning, organizing. So it was always a natural fit for me, to be honest. However, maybe, a question to that, I guess another point to that would be, when did I feel I was an entrepreneur? And I think that I did try different working opportunities, but this is when I realized that I really had entrepreneurship skills
Yeah.
when I felt that things were not going fast enough, and I felt that I needed to be involved in more departments in order to achieve the goals that I was setting
Wow.
out. So this
I
is
love
at the
that.
moment that I said, okay, I feel like I need to do more than just a certain role within an
Within your, yeah, within
organization,
your discipline. Yes, got it, got
and
it.
I need to create a path forward, through this entrepreneurship.
Okay, this is actually awesome. And Julie, like there's so I don't know, I want to ask you about this. Like, were you expert, like you worked in that company I think for many years before becoming a CEO. So my question is that, the challenge that we see a lot with like younger people and in general leaders is that they sometimes get too rigid with that technical expertise and that high performing mindset, that when they move to the leadership position, they're still the one doing all the job, and they're putting all this pressure on their shoulders and say, okay, I'm the one that has to do everything. What was your shift from more I'm a doer, now I'm an enabler, I'm a facilitator, I have to unlock something within my team in order to achieve these goals, I cannot do it alone? Like, what was that like process look like for you?
Well, I'd say especially if you have a technical background, right? Because you advance when you have a technical background, you advance because you have technical knowledge.
Exactly.
So this it's easy to refer back to this. However, I think leadership really steps in, no matter if you have a technical background or not, or in your technical field or not. It's not so much about what you know, because we're in information overload. Let's just face it. If I want to find information about something, I have a million ways of doing it. So it's not so much about what you know, but it's what do you do with this knowledge? And if you don't know information, it's how do you find it, and how do you mobilize it? And sometimes, yeah, it's looking, asking ChatGPT or Gemini a question, but a lot of knowledge is also talking to people. And this
Yes.
is when you really get to understand, that how things really work and how the process really works. Sometimes it's documented, but behind the scenes, that's not really what's happening. So again, knowing how to find the information, having a network, cultivating a network that you can rely on, and really, it's not so much what you know, but it's what do you do about it.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, you can know everything in the world and sit there and do nothing, and you're not going to accomplish anything. So it has to be a good balance between what you know and the actions you
An
take with
action
this
you take.
knowledge.
I love that. I really like it. And I think that this is very true because we are in that overloaded, of information. Like 20 years ago, that might be, oh, if I know something, this is a leverage for me. But now, knowledge itself, it's not necessarily that much of a leverage. But to your point, your judgment, your critical thinking with that knowledge, what you're going to do with it, to your point, like how you're going to translate it for the team. What are you going to unlock in them? Like, what is emerging? Like, how can you connect the dots with that knowledge? I think that's exactly right. That this is more like the process. So tell me about your early leadership days. Like, what was the challenge that you were facing and that you had to solve? Do you have a story to tell us? Something.
I'd say it was learning patience.
Okay.
Definitely for me, it was learning patience, because I obviously was very eager person, and felt like, okay, once I put all these things in place, it's gonna work. My plan's gonna work, right? But at the end of the day, especially, I guess, in leadership or in business in general, business is much more about people. And when you're learning business or leadership in school, it's about management styles and plans and strategies, and this is all great. It's definitely a good basis. But at the end of the day, we're all a bunch of people,
Yes,
right?
working together.
And and you really have to understand what this means, meaning that it's a person that's buying your software. That person has a personality, has desires, has objectives, has goals, has their own plans. And same thing, as part of your team, you'll have a collection of people with their personalities, their objectives, their own career goals. And it's understanding those dynamics and also learning to be patient, and meaning that your goals won't necessarily happen right away. But
Hmm.
this does not mean you cannot persist. Actually, what I've learned is that by persisting, often, after failing a first, second time and learning from it, this is when you really realize that your goals can be achieved. It's just that it takes more time than
Hmm.
we'd like it to be. And
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to persist and you have to be patient. And that's something that's completely counterintuitive for me. And I've had to really coach myself to saying, you know what, it didn't work today, might work
Mhm.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let's just keep going.
Yes. I love this. And you mentioned something very important, like the idea of building those relationships, building those trust, if it's with the community, if it's with the client, if it's with your team, if it's with different departments. One thing that I'm hearing again constantly from leaders is that we don't have time. I don't have time. Like I got to a VP position, but I still don't know my team because we had to deliver and I'm just sitting there as an individual contributor just doing the work. Like what would you tell to people that they don't prioritize? I think definitely we always will find time, but they don't still see that like relational capacity as something extremely important. Like what would you tell them?
I mean, that's a difficult question, and we
Yeah.
could probably spend an hour just talking
Yes,
about that
definitely.
because I feel that also the answer has changed over the last years, especially
Mhm.
since COVID, the famous, COVID. But we've definitely accelerated the use of Teams, and our agendas are fully booked day in, day out.
Yes.
So where do you find that personal touch, that personal time? It's very hard. I mean, in
Mhm.
a Teams meeting, if you dive right into the topic, do you really get to know your collaborators? Maybe not so much. So having the ability to create those moments through team building or through events can definitely help. And yeah, going in the
Mhm.
office is and being at the coffee machine with your
Yes.
colleagues, your team, or your peers. I mean, you can tell so much in person with somebody. You have the feeling, you have the vibe, the intuition to say, okay, this person's not having a good day. Whereas in the teams, it would be much harder
For
to
sure.
see. But that's a difficult question because in today's environment, it is a challenge. I think
Mhm.
this is a challenge to take the time to get to know
Mhm.
and your colleagues, and also are your colleagues open to you getting to know them is
Yes.
also a question because you can only get to know people if they allow themselves to also be
Mhm.
known. So I think in coming back to the theme of leadership, as a leader, to create a space for your team to be able to express themselves authentically, I think is a good step forward.
Yes.
For example, I mean, we're no way perfect. I'm not saying suggesting that we're doing everything perfectly where we are, but one of the things that I have is a daily call where everybody kind of gives themselves give an update of what they're working on. But it could also be a personal update, or it could be a
Right.
joke. And through these meetings,
Yes.
we've gotten to see people's personalities do come out because they're allowed to have their personalities,
Yes.
and we kind of joke around about it. So if things are a little bit less formal, sometimes it allows the quirks to come out and
Yes.
you can
I
get to know people this way.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I work with a lot of remote teams that they are fully remote. They see each other maybe once a year. And the idea is that exactly to be intentional about building these moments of connection and creating that psychological safety that even when you're asking a fun question or an icebreaker, people feel safe to share and they don't think, oh my goodness, like, what is this? Why are we talking about this? But definitely, I totally agree with you. And sometimes, to your point, it's not going to take a lot of time. It doesn't need to be extremely time consuming because, the minute people hear team building or events, it's a lot of preparation, it's a lot of planning. But to your point, 10 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes of conversation, that it's a bit looser and less formal and more informal can really build that trust that we need to build.
I think so, and allowing people to be themselves is
Yes,
easier said than done, but I think that's
I agree.
also a way for people to feel safe enough to be able to express,
Mhm.
what's happening. For
Yeah,
example, oh, my cat is sick or my dog, but if they feel they're going to be judged for it,
exactly.
uh,
Because
you
there's no
know,
safety there. Yeah, exactly. We said, okay,
yeah.
this is not an important thing. I'm not going to share this. So tell me, I know, Julie, you're a self-aware leader. I can see, we've worked together, we've collaborated together. I can see that you're constantly someone who's just improving the work, obviously by your dedication to also women in tech. What were some of your leadership practices that you think that, okay, I've learned this, that they were game changers, and some of the things that you had to unlearn, you had to let go of, that maybe you were just getting it from like, different older leadership styles, or this was something you grew up with? Like, tell me a bit about that.
That's a good question. I'd say that definitely letting go of things having to be perfect. I think you get to a point, for me it was also having my daughter and balancing the company and my daughter. I realized that you had more time in a day than you think. So people that are saying I don't have time, I never have time. Yes, okay, time is a challenge, it's a constant challenge, but if you really want to have time, you will take the time. So
Mhm.
that's something that definitely I learned, and I had to unlearn that the plan had to be perfect and that I had to check all the boxes before getting started. What I
Mhm.
then transitioned to was to say it's better that it's done is better than perfect, and to
Yes.
move towards action even when if I feel unready. And I think
Mhm.
that was a big learning for me, and I think it probably is for many women in general,
Yes.
is to say, okay, I don't need to know everything before I get started. I just
Yes.
need to start. And as I move
Mhm.
forward, I will uncover the remaining unknowns.
Yes.
So
I love that.
I'd say that would be a big thing. And that time in the day, meaning, yeah, it's limited, but there's time. So learning to yourself and how you function and then planning your day around that. For example, I'm more focused in the morning. Always, I'm a morning person. So if I have a document to review, I'll always, save it for the morning. So
Yes.
these are tricks to adapt your time to what you want to accomplish and to your abilities.
I love this idea of like, really knowing yourself and knowing your strengths, what you're good at, what you're not, and then planning the day according to that. And, perfection, I would say that in this season, I've talked, you're the 13th guest for this season. And I deliberately decided to interview female leaders and from different sectors, entrepreneurs like yourself, leaders from like large corporations, non-for-profit, and the idea of letting go of perfection, it's something that everyone mentions. And I think the other thing is that because once you become a high performer, this is also expected from you. Like that's part of your brand, that you're having all the answers, you know everything, you can bring certainty. So I think then when you move to leadership, that's a different like stage, a different animal. So I think that it's a very good mindset shift and transition to understand that taking the action is better than not taking anything because I'm not ready or this is not 100% perfect.
And actually, even taking it one step further, because a couple of years ago, I decided I need to do things that were taking me out of my comfort zone. So I purposely chose to try certain things that I knew I would typically not be comfortable with, and was pleasantly surprised with the results. So, and the growth that I got from it. So, yes,
Mm.
challenge yourself, start. You don't know everything, doesn't matter. Just start
Just
moving forward.
I love that. I love it. So, uh, Julie, through Ultimate Tech, obviously you lead a group of people. So many of them are younger folks, and then through Women in Tech, you get to see a lot of young women. I want to see when you think of leadership, what are some of the challenges that younger people are facing that maybe we didn't have it, this was not the reality back then, or you think that it's the same, but it's just a bit more amplified? Like, what are some of the things that you are seeing all the time?
I definitely see some differences. I mean, I'm talking about how impatient I was, but was still had a realistic view that I had to spend time doing something before I was an expert at it. And I think with the I guess situation where everything is so accessible so easily when you're young, I find a lot of people who are younger have this expectation, are almost more impatient than I was.
Yes,
This
exactly. They want to get it.
expectation
Yeah,
that they're gonna get that leadership position, or their mid to end career goal happen within, the first 2 years of their career, and that because they've done something for 6 months, they're an expert at it.
love
When,
it.
it's very different when you've done something for 2 decades. You'll definitely have a different perspective about certain
Yeah.
challenges than you do after 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, right? So I think that's definitely a challenge that's unique to
Younger
these new
generation.
younger generations. But I think there's also a lot of challenges because they will have to adapt much faster
Yes.
because of the AI, obviously, in the workspace, removing some of the work that would have typically done by, the younger juniors, right, coming into the field. So I think it's really important for these young people to right away develop
Hmm.
critical thinking, and how to put things into action much faster. And like they say in French, le gros bon sens,
Yes.
common sense.
Common sense.
I think developing common sense and street skills
Yes.
is super important nowadays when you start your career.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Julie, what you're saying, because to your point, as we were saying, because it's an overload of information, there is this illusion that, okay, I'm reading and I'm doing for a few months, so I'm good. I've nailed this. Let's move forward. But to your point, the majority of the work is around relationships, is around analytical thinking, is around judgment, is around reading the room, like making sense of things. And that will take time. So I
It
totally agree with you that this is something that you can't excel in like 6 weeks or 6 months.
Yeah, and decision making isn't just doing a list of pros and cons and then just
Yeah.
deciding on this. Sometimes it takes a little bit more time, judgment, conversation, analysis. That's kind of the unsaid,
Yes,
and that you acquire through experience. So
exactly.
I would say definitely it's important when you're young and you're starting to try a bunch of things, but don't expect to become an expert overnight. This does not necessarily happen.
Yeah. I love this idea that, experimentation is key at those early years as a leader. You want to see what type of leader you are, what are the capacities, what you're good at, what you're not, getting out of your comfort zone. But again, to your point, not necessarily feeling stuck in it in the sense that, okay, like I'm the expert right now, so let's move forward. And to your point, maybe some of that also comes from that perfectionist mindset that I need to be the expert for the next step, where in fact you might be a good learner and you're ready for taking the next steps.
And also, I think a good question is there's also a certain concept of what leadership is,
Yes.
right? And leadership is not just all the perks. And often, people aim at a leadership position for all the perks they think they're going to get with it. But
Yeah.
leadership is much more than that. And the real leaders are actually uncovered during hard times. When you actually don't have the perks, you have all the
The dirt.
challenging sides of leadership, the stress, the decisions, the pressure.
Yeah.
And this is when, if you rise through those moments, this is when we say, okay, we'll determine what a great leader is, right?
Hmm.
So I think when you're young, you're aiming at the perks. When
Yes.
you realize, when you get real leadership and responsibilities, you realize that it's much more than that.
Yes.
And then, some people might telling themselves, well, I didn't want, this is not what I, this
Yeah.
is what I
Which is
came out
totally
for. I,
fair.
I
Yeah.
just want the perks. But no, the reality is leadership is not about the perks. It's
Yes.
really about, you know, making something good out of challenging situations.
Yes.
And so that's what I'd say to young people today. If you like creating opportunities out of challenges, you can become a leader and be happy being a leader. If
Being
you're
a
just
leader.
looking for,
Yeah.
if
And
you're
you're
just,
gonna,
if
yeah,
you
and
just
you're
want the
gonna be
perks,
okay. You're gonna be okay on those, like, difficult moments. Yes. I
yeah.
love this. So, the other thing that I think it's hard for people now these days is a question of reskilling, upskilling, reinventing, whatever we're going through with AI and everything that's happening is that, okay, I need to learn new thing. And this pivot looks like a bit sometimes is scary for people. I want to see, did you have a pivotal moment in your career that you had to completely shift something, and what was that story, and how did you do it in a way to just give like some insights to people? It's not, it is scary, but you can make it happen.
I mean, I feel I'm constantly shifting.
Mhm.
So, I think today I feel like I'm constantly shifting, and it's finding the balance through those shifts, right? Whereas it I guess it's like riding a bike a little bit,
Yes.
right?
Okay.
You have to find your balance, but at the same time, you're constantly, yeah, maybe moving in different direction, going at different speeds, having to
Mhm.
adapt, I guess, to the situation. Uh, I wouldn't have like a specific thing to say about that, but to me, learning, it's a daily task. I'm
Yes.
always learning something new, always trying to find out new information on a daily basis. So I cannot say I had a specific pivot moment.
Mhm.
It's more a collection of constant, back to what I was saying at the beginning, it's constant habits, right?
Yes.
Constant learning. I remember reading something. I can't remember what it was exactly a long time ago that said, you have this amount of time in your day, right? And so if you take, let's say, a 15 minutes to do action A, which is, I don't know, watch TV, let's just say
Yes.
something really, really basic, and you take that 15 minutes and instead you read a book about something.
Yes.
Well, maybe you'll only have time to read 1 or 2 pages, 3 pages, four, depending how fast you read. And you might think, I only have time to read 4 pages, so why would I read this book, right? I'll go back to my TV show instead. But at the end of the day, those 4 or 5 pages
Pages a week.
accumulate over time. And then you imagine how many books in 10 years can you read out of that 15 minutes every day, and where you will be at, or the knowledge you will have with those 15
Exactly.
minutes accumulated. So sometimes it's a question of perspective and bringing it back to what can you do today to, move in that direction.
In the right direction. I love it. You just remind me of Atomic Habits, because I think that's exactly where it just talks about, like, if it's 10 minutes, it's 10 minutes, but then it accumulates and you're building habits. And like, this is how you can make look those small shifts. And to your point, I love this approach that if we need to reskill or upskill or reinvent herself, instead of really feeling overwhelmed by it, like, do some research with AI the first day, read an article about it the second day, something. Are there online courses? Like, you just really, I'm also a very big fan of small, consistent actions so that you can build your capacity over time. You cannot, because we're not living in the world that you can just say, okay, I'm not working now. I want to just build my, like, it doesn't work like that.
Especially because what we see often online or on TV or whatever is the end result. It's the end result where somebody had a success. We don't see their how did they get there
Yeah.
necessarily. And so I can understand that for young people it's overwhelming. They think about the end result where they'd like to be, and then, what is the path to get there? So
Yes.
I'd say to reduce that anxiety, definitely say, just place it as an intent, but what can you do today to get there? Is it a book that you want to pick up? Is it a research? You find a course online, a person you want to talk to? Could be something very simple. And putting that into motion will make you already feel less anxious than just
Love it.
still thinking about the end goal. Because
The
I also
end goal.
realize that younger generation of leaders are also very anxious.
Yes. Oh,
So
for
I think
sure they
there's,
are. Yeah, yeah. They're
yeah,
constantly, even they have the FOBO, the fear of becoming obsolete. Am I relevant? Am I not? And yes, to your point, I think that there's somehow the system asking them, like, they're under like unattainable expectations from the system, but also themselves, to your point, because
yeah.
of what they are being fed, like being feed every day, like the feed that they're receiving. So tell me a bit, about the future of leadership. I know that you've recently got an award. Let us please, first of all, tell us a bit about it. And I want to know that what is your mindset about how the future of leadership is going to look like? Like, what do you think? What are some of the main characteristic of the leaders who will thrive in the years to come?
Yes, so back to your first question, which was the award. This year I was named 2026 CEO of the Year from AQT, Association Québécoise des Technologies, which I'm
Yes,
very proud of, and also won an award for business transition.
yes, love
Since
it.
my parents founded the company and I took over in 2017, and obviously offered growth and opportunity for the future, especially
You
a tech
transformed it. Yeah,
company,
yeah,
right? I think it's not so unique, but it was a good use case to showcase. All this to say, where do I see the future of leadership? That's definitely a big question, but I really like a lot of the things that you do at Glee Factor, and that human side
yes,
of leadership, I think is becoming more and more important, especially in the current context. And it's seeing how you can help your team adapt.
yes,
We talk about a lot about change management, but now it's change management times three, times four, times five. And it's
yes,
happening so fast. So I think helping your team learn how to adapt, and I think creating those safe space, as
yes.
you mentioned, as you talk a lot about, is also important because yes, we are facing challenges, and
Mhm.
we have to be able to talk about it. Without necessarily being judged. In order to find a solution, we have to uncover the problem properly. And to
Yes,
uncover the problem properly, we have to be able to talk about real things. And sometimes those conversations are not always, so pleasant, or sometimes, you need to feel safe to be able to really give your opinion. But
yes.
I think this is how you get to the bottom of it, and this is how you can really move forward. And it's not an environment that's easy to put in place, but I think it's so important for being able to encourage adaptation and creativity, and things like that.
And navigating change. It's interesting. I talk to many leaders that say that, what, we've been working together as a team for many years. We have this amazing culture, but we don't talk about problems because no one wants to, like offend anyone. They don't want to like bring like negativity. And I said, yeah, but this is exactly against psychological safety because to your point, you're missing many opportunities to talk about what's not working, the challenges. And when you're talking about transformation, that is key to your point. Like, this is how you can transform. So if you don't do it, then like, we're just like missing many opportunities. So I love this human-centered approach, more relational skills, psychological safety, so that you can tap into the collective intelligence. I love those. So the last question that I want to ask you, you mentioned this idea that young leaders are stressed out, they're overwhelmed, they're anxious. At the same time, they really have this desire to lead differently, to build different systems. What would be your final words for these people that maybe you would have told yourself also in your earlier days of leadership? Like, what would you tell these like people listening now and will listen, watch this later?
Just go for it.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, at the end of the day, life is short. You have nothing to lose. Just go for it. Try things. And if the first time you do it, you fail, it's not the end of the world. I think we put so much pressure on ourselves to succeed the first time, but in fact, the learnings you'll make from failing will be much greater than just having succeeded. So I'd say go for it, try it, do it. Uh, Stop thinking about it. Just bring it into action, into motion.
Yes, I love this, Julie. And and I know that you are like you're walking the talk as well. You're someone who's putting into action all the time, having different projects going on. And I totally agree with you that this is even though it's overwhelming time, this is a great opportunity for us to experiment different territories, different leaderships, like different industries. Like this is a great opportunity for us to test things out and to see where we can add the most value.
Yeah, you know how you tell your kids, just go out there and play. Well, I'd say the same thing. Just go out there and play. Don't just
Uh,
stay behind your phone or your computer. Go out there, talk to people, try things. Put
I
things in
love
motion.
Yes, and I love this idea of talking to other people. I know that one of the words that we hear all the time now is a question of influence, building your network, but in simple terms, just building those connections, talking to different people. Let it be the clients, let it be other team members, other leaders, peers, up, down. Like they are like to your point, like they're like bringing valuable experiences and learning opportunities.
Exactly. And you're perfectly right to talk to anyone and everyone. Don't just seek to talk to a certain person because they have a certain role, or you
Yes.
can learn and interact value in a valuable way with anybody. So just be open. And you know what? You can also attend the Women in Tech events and
Yes,
network
exactly.
and build your network this way. That's also
For
a great
sure,
a great way.
definitely. Yeah, 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 definitely. And we're just gonna bring this idea that we're gonna collaborate and partner up with something around leadership development. We're not gonna say more about this, but Julie, thank you so much for being intentional as a CEO, as a Canada head for women in tech, and in general, like it's really for me, it's exciting to expose younger people to leaders like yourself, that they are self-aware, they're open, and they're really like, yeah, they're just made for the future, I would say. Thank you so much for joining us. And do you have any final words?
Thank you so much for having me, and have a nice day, everyone.
Thanks a lot, everyone. So the live will be saved on LinkedIn, and the YouTube will be uploaded in the next few days. We're going to be back next week with another conversation. Again, thank you so much, Julie, and thanks to everyone for joining live. Bye.